Have you ever had an old shirt that you haven't worn for quite a while, and you put it on and you check the breast pocket and you find a stub from a movie theater, and it's from some movie you saw maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and you don't even remember seeing that movie, and you go, so that's what I was doing on July 10th of whatever year. Well, that is something that's happened to me quite a bit with just like an old garment. Well, recently I put on this old coat, and I got to thinking something was moving in the inner pocket. I hadn't remembered there was an inner pocket. And I found a bunch of brochures and I believe a movie stub and some minutes from a Simpich character doll staff meeting. I was very surprised that I had that in the coat pocket. Apparently, I had gone to a staff meeting wearing the coat, and they always passed out the minutes from the week before. And I had just plunged them into that pocket and promptly forgotten about them. And these staff minutes are from February 24th of 2004. And my parents organized staff meetings every week, every Tuesday. They would call their department's leaders together, the supervisors together, to meet in their office. They'd sit around the table and they would go through a very carefully planned agenda that each one would bring to the table. And it's a wonderful slice of history to look back at this. So much of this I never would have remembered. At this particular staff meeting, my parents, Bob and Jan, were both there. Neil, who was the manager at the time, Midge, my aunt, was the painting supervisor. Jackie was clothing supervisor. Julie was casting supervisor. Jan Christensen was sales supervisor. Sharon was clothing development supervisor. And Judy was the accounting supervisor. So they gathered, and I was there this day. I didn't always attend the meetings, but my parents always encouraged me to be there when I could, and it was always very interesting, and there were a lot I wasn't there for, but this particular one I attended and had some things that I needed to discuss with the staff. So, as was typical, very typical, my dad opened with a prayer, and Midge, my aunt, read a devotion, A Cross Too Heavy. So they always opened with a devotion and then usually just opened up the minutes from the week before and got right into the meeting. And interestingly, this particular week, Julie from casting brought up some follow-up on the Oz, the Wizard of Oz bases. They're drilling them and painting them, and they should be delivered from the casting department to the finishing room or into this building, the workshop, sometime maybe tomorrow. The King 1 feet, Pilgrim Man rifles, and the Skater feet, they needed to know the status on those. Julie needs a list of accessories to know what numbers to do, because they would cast the accessories in a separate building across the highway and then have to deliver them over here. So those were some follow-up things that were discussed. My dad had just completed designing the Marley character doll. And of course, he read an excerpt from Dickens' Christmas Carol. Very appropriate. That, he would so do that. My mother, she gave some Sigrids. That is one of the Scandinavian characters. She gave them back to the casting department, to Julie, to check to see if the molds were shrinking. She was a little concerned that something looked a little funny with the head. So back to the casting department. Judy reported various things that were going on with the sales in the accounting department, and this was a time of some stress for the Simpich character doll business, just a little over a year before my parents announced their retirement. So they went over numbers and they were crunching them and working on that. Always a source of stress for my parents. Neil, the general manager, was working on some staffing issues. Midge, head of the painting department, she was giving Lori, who is in the painting department, a list of things they need, and they were wanting me to come to the painting room to go over some of the painting on some of the pieces that I had designed, so we could discuss the colors and how large the eyes should be and the cheeking, just various things that way. Jan Christensen from sales had a request for a donation from the Air Force Academy's Spouses Club, and it was decided that yes, they will give them something. Julie, again from casting, had just finished the Masters on Little Red Riding Hood, and they should be starting to come over in a couple of weeks. And apparently I asked if it was possible to put a cone in the snowman so he wasn't so heavy. Julie said she would look into that. Jackie from the sewing department, supervisor, had nothing to add, and Sharon from clothing design did add something but forgot what it was from the week before. And Sharon is the one that put the minutes together, and she respectfully submitted them. And all the supervisors kept a book of these minutes, and they were a wonderful reference. And you know, handmade figures, all put together in this building. It was a very intricate process. You know, you have everything's being made by hand. And how do you go about organizing something like that? Well, I have to say, for my parents and their staff, organization was a key factor. In the early 2000s, they were just starting to use a computer, believe it or not, to help stay organized. And they were just starting to take credit cards. So it was a time of, they were moving into the 21st century when they were actually doing a very old world craft. And the way they were set up was very old world, where you had people really working hard at making things by hand. And hundreds of dolls were being produced by hand with great detail every single year. So great organization. But I will also say that my parents' leadership really was an amazing thing, and their staff thought so. I thought so too, because they weren't only incredible artists, they had a real gift for leadership. And this was so apparent. They were fair, they listened, they were willing to talk through problems, and their staff was painfully loyal to them overall for you know, just to help them out and produce these beautiful dolls, you know, year in, year out, over and over, to make them all by hand. It was a wonderful group effort, and again, with my parents' amazing leadership, and they had to develop that over the years. They had no idea it was going to grow like it did and develop into this huge thing. And at one point in the late 80s, they had over 100 people working for them. So organization, teamwork, listening, and the minutes were really a window into that during the time. And then apparently it was from my pocket from all these years ago. So it was great to find this, and brought back a lot of memories, things I never would have remembered without this. And I'm sure the supervisors that were there, maybe they've saved them. I'm sure they think back on various things, but it was a wonderful season for many of them. And when my parents announced their retirement, there was this loyalty that carried through my parents and everyone clear till the end. You know, 2 years, the staff stayed with them as they were trying to figure out how to close the business. So a wonderful snapshot into a time. So it's great to look back at the minutes and remember. So yes. So thank you so much for watching today, and please subscribe and let us know things you'd like to know about the history, and we'll find little nuggets and rabbit trails and all kinds of journeys through various aspects of this amazing business.